What happens to the children of history's most notorious figures? When we think of World War II, names like Himmler, Göring, and Hess come to mind. These men were architects of unimaginable horror, but they were also fathers. After the war ended and the world reckoned with the devastation, a heavy question remained. What became of their children? Did they carry the burden of their father's sins? Or did they forge their own paths, separate from the darkness of their family name? The stories of these children are complex, tragic, and utterly fascinating, revealing the long, dark shadow cast by the Third Reich. Let's start with one of the most poignant stories, that of Gudrun Berwitz, the daughter of Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS and the architect of the Holocaust. To her, Himmler wasn't a monster. He was Papi. Gudrun was a devoted daughter, fiercely loyal to her father's memory her entire life. After the war, she never denounced Nazism. Instead, she became a central figure in a secretive post-war organization called Still Hilfe, or Silent Aid. This group provided financial and legal support to former SS members who were arrested, convicted, or on the run. Gudrun was known as the benevolent godmother of the far-right scene, helping men who had committed terrible atrocities evade justice. She worked for a time for West Germany's intelligence agency in the 1960s, a fact that only came to light recently. Gudrun Berwitz passed away in 2018, having spent her life defending the indefensible and upholding her father's monstrous legacy. Her story is a chilling example of how familial love can be twisted into a lifelong dedication to a hateful ideology. Now, let's look at a completely different path taken by Edda Göring, the daughter of Hermann Göring, the commander of the Luftwaffe and Hitler's designated successor. Edda was treated like a princess during the Third Reich, showered with gifts and affection. Unlike Gudrun Himmler, Edda largely withdrew from public life after the war. She maintained a deep love for her father, but presented him as a complex figure, not a simple villain. She remembered him as a loving parent who was caught up in the politics of his time. For decades, she fought legal battles to reclaim artwork and assets that her father had looted during the war, including a famous painting by Lucas Cranach the Elder. While she never became a public Nazi apologist like Gudrun, she also never fully confronted the horrific reality of her father's actions. Edda lived a quiet, secluded life, her identity forever tied to a father she adored and a history the world condemned. She passed away in 2018, leaving behind a legacy of complicated loyalty and unresolved history. The story of the Hess family is different yet again. Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, flew to Scotland in 1941 and was imprisoned for the rest of his life. His son, Wolf Rudiger Hess, was only 3 years old at the time. Wolf grew up with an absent father, a man he knew only through letters and brief prison visits. He dedicated his life to one singular mission, proving that his father was wrongly imprisoned and, he claimed, murdered in Spandau prison in 1987. Wolf became an author and a publisher, writing books that portrayed his father as a misunderstood peacemaker. He campaigned tirelessly for his father's release and later for an investigation into his death, which was officially ruled a suicide. Unlike Gudrun Himmler, Wolf Hess didn't actively support a neo-Nazi movement, but he engaged in historical revisionism to redeem his father's name. His entire identity was consumed by the quest to rewrite his family's chapter in history, showing how a child can become trapped by the narrative of a parent, even one they barely knew. Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, had 10 children. His eldest son, Martin Adolf Bormann, named after his godfather Hitler, offers a story of radical transformation. Raised in the heart of the Nazi elite, he was a true believer as a boy. But after the war and the disappearance of his father, his world shattered. He found refuge in the Catholic Church, and in a complete rejection of his father's ideology, became a priest. He spent his life as a missionary in the Congo, working to atone for the sins of his father and his nation. He later left the priesthood to marry, but continued to speak publicly about his experiences. He traveled to schools in Germany and Austria, warning students about the dangers of Nazism and anti-Semitism. He spoke of the heavy burden of his name, a curse he had to bear. His life was a testament to the power of repentance and the possibility of breaking free from a toxic inheritance. But not all children could find such a clear path. The children of Hans Frank, the Governor-General of occupied Poland, known as the Butcher of Poland, had vastly different reactions. His son, Nicholas Frank, became one of the most outspoken and vitriolic critics of his father. He wrote a scathing book titled The Father, A Reckoning, in which he expressed pure hatred for the man who brought so much suffering into the world. Nicholas has spent his life publicly denouncing his father, refusing to forgive him, and describing him as a cowardly, weak, and evil man. He sees it as his duty to ensure his father is never forgotten as the monster he was. In stark contrast, his brother, Norman Frank, remembered a different father. While acknowledging his father's guilt, Norman retained some affection for him, recalling moments of kindness. He chose a quieter life, trying to reconcile the image of his loving father with the historical figure responsible for mass murder. This deep divide between the two brothers shows how the same horrific legacy can be processed in profoundly different ways, shattering family bonds in the process. Let's consider the Goebbels children. This is perhaps the most tragic story of all. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, and his wife Magda had 6 children. In the final days of the war, trapped in Hitler's bunker, Magda Goebbels poisoned all 6 of her children before she and her husband took their own lives. They couldn't imagine their children living in a world without National Socialism. These children, aged 4 to 12, had no chance to grow up, to reckon with their parents' actions, or to choose their own paths. Their story is a horrifying final act of fanaticism, a demonstration of an ideology so twisted that it would rather destroy its own children than allow them to live in a different world. Their fate serves as the ultimate dark punctuation mark on the legacy of the Nazi leadership. These stories show there was no single path for the children of Nazi leaders. Some, like Gudrun Himmler, embraced their father's dark legacies. Others, like Martin Bormann Jr., dedicated their lives to atonement. Many, like Etta Gring and Norman Frank, lived in a gray area of complicated love and denial. And some, like Nicholas Frank, were consumed by a righteous hatred. What all their lives reveal is that the shadow of history is long and inescapable. They could not choose their parents, but they were forced to live with the consequences of their choices. Their stories are a powerful reminder that the crimes of one generation ripple through the next, leaving behind a complex inheritance of guilt, shame, and a desperate search for identity.